I heard whispers coming from my bedroom, but it wasn't my girlfriend, Nosleep. It started subtly. A low hum, almost imperceptible, like the refrigerator was working harder than usual. I live in an old building pre-war. They call it so creaks and groans are just part of the ambience. But this was different. This was a feeling, a pressure in my ears, a sense of unease that settled in my stomach and wouldn't dissipate. Sarah, my girlfriend, wasn't home. She works nights at the hospital, a registered nurse battling the relentless churn of Chicago's emergency rooms. I'm a freelance graphic designer, lucky enough to work from our apartment. Lucky until the humming started. It was a Tuesday. Crisp November air snuck in around the edges of the ill-fitting windows, making the ancient radiators clank and hiss. I was hunched over my laptop, wrestling with a particularly stubborn logo design when I first noticed it. The hum. I paused my music, thinking maybe it was interfering with the audio. Silence. Except that hum, it seemed to be coming from the bedroom. I got up, cautiously approaching the closed door. We keep the bedroom door shut during the day, keeps the cat from shredding the curtains while we're not in there. I pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing, just the muffled sounds of the city outside. Back at my desk, the hum returned, almost mocking me. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the design, but it was like a mosquito buzzing in my ear, insistent and irritating. Then I heard it, not the hum but something else. Whispers. Faint, indistinct, like a radio tuned between stations, definitely coming from the bedroom. My heart pounded. I stood up again, this time a prickle of fear crawling up my spine. I slowly opened the bedroom door, expecting, I don't know what. Empty room. Sunlight streamed through the grimy windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the bed was neatly made. The cat, Winston, was curled up on the pillow, fast asleep. I walked into the room, listening intently. Silence. Just the distant drone of traffic. Hello, I called out, my voice sounding weak and uncertain. Nothing. I felt ridiculous, talking to an empty room. Maybe I was just stressed. Deadlines were looming, and the constant pressure to find new clients was starting to wear me down. I went back to work, determined to put it out of my mind. But the whispers returned, fainter now, but still there. Taunting. That night Sarah came home exhausted, her face pale under the fluorescent lights of the apartment. Long night, I asked, already knowing the answer. She just nodded, kicking off her shoes and collapsing onto the couch. I made her some tea and tried to act normal, but the whispers were still echoing in my head. Hey, I said hesitantly after she'd finished her tea. Have you noticed anything weird lately? She looked at me, her brow furrowed. Weird how? Like a humming sound, or whispers, she sighed. Mark, honey, you've been working too hard. You're probably just hearing things. This building is old. It makes noises. No, it's not just the building, I insisted. It's different. It's coming from the bedroom. She got up and walked into the bedroom, listening for a moment. I don't hear anything, she said, shaking her head. Come on, let's just relax. I'll put on a movie. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, but I knew what I heard. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. The whispers grew more frequent, more distinct. I still couldn't make out the words, but the tone was undeniable. It was malicious. They only came when Sarah wasn't home. I started researching the building's history online. It was built in 1928, a grand old building that had seen better days. I found some old newspaper articles about a series of unexplained deaths in the building in the 1950s. A woman fell down the stairs. A man died in his sleep. Another disappeared without a trace. The articles were vague, attributing the deaths to accidents or illness, but something about the way they were written, it felt like there was more to the story. I found an online forum dedicated to haunted places in Chicago. Someone had posted about our building, calling it a hotspot for paranormal activity. They mentioned the whispers, the feeling of being watched, and the occasional fleeting glimpse of figures in the hallways. I started to feel like I was losing it. Was I really hearing these things, or was I just imagining them? Was I cracking under the pressure? One afternoon, the whispers were particularly loud. I could almost make out the words. They seemed to be saying my name. Mark, Mark. It was a chorus of voices, whispering in unison. I panicked. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox and started tearing apart the bedroom wall. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I had to find the source of the whispers. I ripped down the wallpaper, exposing the old plaster beneath. I hammered at the plaster, sending chunks of it flying across the room. I was consumed by a desperate need to silence the voices. Finally, I broke through the wall, revealing a small cavity. Inside, I found a collection of old documents, letters, photographs, and a small, leather-bound diary. The diary was written in a spidery, faded script. I opened it and began to read. It was the diary of a woman who had lived in the apartment in the 1950s. She wrote about the same things I was experiencing. The whispers, the feeling of being watched, the growing sense of dread. She believed the building was haunted by something evil, something that fed on fear and despair. The last entry was dated the day before she disappeared. "It knows I'm here," she wrote. "It's getting closer. I can't escape." I dropped the diary, my hands shaking. I felt a cold gust of air in the room, even though the windows were closed. The whispers intensified, surrounding me, closing in. "Mark, Mark," I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt a presence in the room, something dark and malevolent. Then I saw it, a fleeting shadow in the corner of my eye, a glimpse of a figure standing in the doorway. I couldn't make out the details, but I knew it was there, watching me. Sarah came home just as I was collapsing onto the floor, sobbing and screaming. She took one look at the ruined bedroom and the wild look in my eyes and called 911. The police came, along with an ambulance. They took me to the hospital where they ran tests and asked me questions. I tried to explain what I had been experiencing, but they just looked at me with pity. They thought I was having a breakdown. Sarah stayed by my side, her face etched with worry. She didn't say much, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She wanted to believe me, but it was hard. I understood. I was released from the hospital the next day, the prescription for anti-anxiety medication and a referral to a therapist. Sarah took me back to the apartment. It looked even worse in the daylight. The bedroom was a disaster, the walls torn apart, the floor covered in debris. "We need to move," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah nodded. "I know," she said. "I've already called the landlord. We're breaking the lease." We packed our belongings in a daze, trying to avoid the bedroom as much as possible. The whispers were still there, but they seemed fainter now, as if they were losing their power. Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly woman who lived down the hall, saw us carrying boxes out of the apartment. She stopped me in the hallway, her eyes filled with a strange knowing. "It doesn't like to be disturbed," she said, her voice raspy. "It feeds on the unhappiness. You're wise to leave." Did you ever hear the whispers?" I asked, my voice trembling. She just smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "This building has a long memory," she said. "Some things are best left forgotten." We moved to a new apartment on the other side of the city. It was a modern building, bright and airy, with none of the dark corners and hidden histories of our old place. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Carter, who helped me process what I had experienced. She suggested that I had been suffering from a combination of stress, anxiety, and sleep deprivation, which had triggered a psychotic episode. She said that the whispers were likely auditory hallucinations, a manifestation of my own internal fears and anxieties. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something real had happened in that apartment, something dark and malevolent. Sarah was supportive, but I could tell she was still skeptical. She wanted to move on, to put the whole thing behind us. We tried to rebuild our lives, to create a sense of normalcy. I started a new design project, working from home again. Sarah continued her long shifts at the hospital. One evening, I was sitting at my desk, working on a new logo design. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. Sarah was at work. Suddenly, I heard it, a faint hum, almost imperceptible, like the refrigerator was working harder than usual. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. No, it couldn't be. I dismissed it. It was probably just my imagination, the lingering effects of the anxiety. I went back to work, trying to focus on the design, but the hum persisted, growing louder, more insistent. Then I heard it, not the hum, but something else. Whispers, faint, indistinct, like a radio tuned between stations, coming from my computer speakers. "Mark, Mark," I stared at the speakers, my blood running cold. I reached out and turned them off. Silence. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. It was just my imagination. I was just stressed. I turned the speakers back on. The hum returned, followed by the whispers. "Mark, we're always watching." I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. I ran to the bedroom and grabbed Sarah's pillow, clutching it to my chest. I sat there for hours, listening to the silence, waiting for Sarah to come home. I didn't dare turn on the lights. I didn't dare breathe. I was afraid of what I might hear or see. I thought I heard something then, in the wall, just a faint scratching sound like nails on plaster. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to stop. Please, God, just make it stop. When Sarah finally came home, she found me huddled in the corner of the living room, rocking back and forth, mumbling to myself. "Mark, what's wrong? What happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I couldn't speak. I just pointed to the computer, my eyes wide with terror. She looked at the computer, then back at me. "I don't understand," she said. "What are you talking about?" I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I just started to cry. She held me close, stroking my hair. "It's okay," she said. "I'm here, you're safe." But I knew we weren't safe. It was still there, watching us, waiting. I don't know what it is or what it wants, but I know it's not going to stop. I'm sitting here now, watching the sun rise, exhaustion etched on my face in a home office so Spartan I've refused to even hang pictures. Winston the cat rubs against my leg. He seems normal, oblivious. I'm staring at my computer. The monitor is blank. The speakers are unplugged, tucked away in a drawer. My current project remains untouched. I haven't heard the whispers since that night, but I still feel them. The feeling of being watched hasn't gone away. It lingers, a constant pressure at the back of my mind. I'm starting to wonder if it wasn't the building at all. Maybe it was me. Maybe I carried something with me, something that latched onto me and won't let go. Or maybe, just maybe, they can follow. I glance over at the wall. A newly plastered, freshly painted wall. It's white, pristine, unmarked. For now.